So I want to take a moment to talk about knives. Knives are an integral part of anybody in the kitchen, from scratch cook, amateur cook to professional chef. You know, it doesn't matter how much you spend on a knife, as long as you look after it and maintain it, it's going to be absolutely fine for its life cycle. So I'll go through the set of knives that I use on a day-to-day basis. So this is my go-to, my trusty cook's knife. It's brilliant for everything, really. Really good, solid knife. You'll recognise the shape. A carving knife, a really long carving knife, long, thin, really good for those Sunday meats that you're carving up, beef, ham, that sort of stuff. It's really good, and as long as it's maintained, it's great. You'll recognise the shape of this one. This is the boning knife, so this is what butchers tend to use. If you want to get into butchery and learn how to break down a chicken, for example, as a starting point, this is a really good knife to have in your kit. The fish knife. The fish knife is super thin and it's also flexible. So when you're skinning fish, taking the bones out on a V-cut, it's really good because it's bendy and it can get under. The bread knife, the serrated knife, everybody's got one of these. These are not only good for bread, they're good for cutting through beef Wellingtons. And this is a fun knife. This is just a chopper. This is a really good knife to go to for chopping vegetables, for some of the cuts that I'm going to show you today. This is an ideal knife. And this little bad boy is the finger shredder. This is the tomato knife. Really small, super sharp, serrated knife. Really good for small fruits, tomatoes, some things that some knives won't normally get through. This is your boy, and they're about £2, really cheap to pick up. And my steel. I have a diamond edge steel. Some people sharpen their knives on a round steel. Some people sharpen their knives on a whetstone. I just prefer this. I just run my knife over it 2 or 3 times. Every time I use it, it keeps it nice and sharp and it maintains it really well. So on that, I'm going to show you how I sharpen my knife. So I'm right-handed, hold my steel in my left hand, and we'll go with the cook's knife. You want to start with the heel of the knife at the top of the steel, and you want to look for a 45-degree-ish angle. You see chefs on TV just throwing their knife down the steel, and yeah, that's great. Those guys have been doing it for years. From a beginner's point of view, just do it slow. It doesn't matter. So if you start with the heel of your knife at the top, as I said, and just run the knife down to the bottom. So by the time you get to the bottom, the tip of your knife is at the bottom of the steel. And then the same on the other side. And if you apply a little bit of pressure, you should be able to feel that. You almost feel it getting sharper. You don't have to go super fast. In fact, I would implore you to not go super fast. You run the risk of taking your hand off. Just nice and slow and steady. If you sharpen your knife like this, if you're holding it like this, always sharpen all your knives like this. There are microscopic, tiny little teeth on this steel, and if you start sharpening it in all which ways, they're just going to blunt. It's going to damage your knife. So if you sharpen your knife one way, stick to doing it that way all the time. And then when you get a bit more confident, you can start going a bit faster. And it really is as simple as that. Make sure that before you use your knife, after you've sharpened it, you just give it a little wipe, because you'll get, if you've sharpened it properly, some carbon from your knife. And in a nutshell, that's it. That's how to sharpen your knife, maintain your knife, keep it safe. A sharp knife is a safe knife. You don't be cutting yourself with a blunt knife. You don't be cutting yourself at all, but it's a lot easier to deal with if your knife is super sharp. So using my cook's knife that I've just sharpened, we're just going to go through 3 basic cuts that any chef should know. So I'm going to secure my chopping board with a blue cloth. Now that might seem a bit daft, but if you're chopping and your fingers are swapping about and your chopping board's moving about, that's no good. So just a damp blue cloth or any sort of kitchen roll and your chopping board, and it just becomes really secure. That's not slipping anywhere. So first of all, I'm going to show you how to do what's called a brunoise. Sounds fancy. It's just a fine dice. Really simple as that. So take an onion and peel it. And then we're going to keep the root in. That's really important, otherwise it flays out all over the place. So down through the root. Just pop that one to one side. And just make sure that there's not a tiny little bit of skin on there. That makes it really difficult to cut through. So we'll just take that one layer off. But don't get rid of that, and I'll show you why, because we don't want anything to go to waste. I'll just pop that little bit to one side. So, if we take the tip off. Now, safety is so important here. I start by holding the onion in my left hand. I sort of have my fingers angled at it's become natural now, it's become part of me. I have them angled so my fingertips sort of kick in a little bit and my top knuckle just guides my knife. So, what we're going to do is, using our fingers as guides with the root in the onion, just cut as fine as we can. You don't have to go super fast with this. You don't have to go fast at all. In fact, the slower the better while you're still learning. So we get it to that point. It's cut all the way. Then we cut in. Taking care not to chop our fingers. And this is the brunoise cut. This is the fine dice. And then little finger and thumb, hold the sides together and the 3 fingers on top. And using your finger as a guide again. And there you've got really good, fine dice, dead simple. One of the most common knife skills you'll find in the kitchen is a brunoise, and it's dead easy. You just got to take your time and have a sharp knife. So the next technique I'm going to do is julienne. It's just fine strips. So I'm just going to run my knife over my steel. And then I've got some shallot here. And then I'm just going to cut into that. Now, I'm going to take this off in layers because that'll allow us to get better strips. So, just make sure that you have got all the skin off. The best way to do is to take the layers of the shallot apart because you get a more consistent cut, I guess. So, you can do it one by one. In fact, I would employ you to do it one by one at the start until you find on your feet. So, back and forth, using your fingers as a guide again. And you'll find how best to hold your knife. It's all right me standing here and telling you how to hold your knife. I've developed over the years to hold my knife like this over the heel of it with my knuckle. That's just how I hold my knife. I think, some people hold it like that. It's however it feels comfortable for you as long as it's safe. So with the julienne again, holding your shallot, using your finger as a guide, and rocking backwards and forwards with your knife. And you can see there, lovely thin strips. So this is really the first cut that I learned in a kitchen. It's just one of those ones that's really good to practice your knife skills on. And it's a bit of a challenge each time. Just got to make sure that you're safe. Not putting your fingers in harm's way. So julienne is a French cookery term which is just long, thin strips. It just sounds a bit more fancy when you say I'm cooking the shallot julienne. So next time you hear that on a cookery show, you'll know exactly what they're talking about. It's dead easy, but go steady, go slow. Speed kills, or it certainly takes the end of your fingers off. Have fun and make sure you keep your knife sharp. One of the first cuts that I learned when I started cooking was Mirepoix, and essentially means roughly chopped vegetables. It's often used in stocks. It's put into a court bouillon, which is a stock that you make with water and root vegetables to cook shellfish in. Just puts more flavour into it, and it's root vegetables, so it's an onion. And remember, I said with the brunoise when we took off the outer layer of the onion to not throw it away because it's good to use for Mirepoix. It's essentially chunky veg. There's no real sort of uniform to it really. It's just essentially making it chunky. So with the onion, keep the root in again and just nice and chunky. 3 across, 3 down. And there you see, there's the onion. With the carrot, it's exactly the same. Just keep it nice and chunky. And again, the same principles apply. Use your finger as a guide. Great for stocks. And then we've got some celery. These are the most common vegetables that we use for Mirepoix. And that's it really. That's essentially the 3 main cuts that you're going to need to start off with. Brunoise, julienne, Mirepoix, each have their place. Each with practice are super easy to do. I would just say, just crack on, just have fun with it. Make sure your knife stays sharp, whether it's a cheap knife or an expensive knife, it doesn't matter if it's maintained, it's got a great life cycle. Thanks for watching, go steady and get stuck in.